In the late 1980s, an 8-year-old boy named Lorenzo was diagnosed with a rare and devastating brain disease called adrenoleukodystrophy, or ALD. The doctors had no cure. They told his parents to take him home and make him comfortable because nothing could stop the disease from slowly shutting down his body and his mind. But his parents refused to accept that as an answer. They went to medical libraries, grilled researchers, and taught themselves biochemistry. Against all odds, they discovered something the medical world had overlooked: 2 special fats, oleic acid and uric acid, found in pure olive oil. This could block the buildup of the toxic fatty acids that were destroying Lorenzo's brain. This mixture became known as Lorenzo's oil. It wasn't a miracle cure. It couldn't reverse the damage that was already done, but it worked powerfully in children who hadn't yet shown symptoms. The lesson is bigger than ALD. It's about the role of the right nutrients and how they play in keeping us alive and healthy. When your body is missing what it was designed to have, the consequences can be devastating. Lorenzo's story is an extreme example, but in a way, all of us are living with a milder version of the same problem. Our modern diets have stripped out the essential things God built into food: healthy fats, fiber, minerals, and replaced them with cheap fillers, dyes, and chemical substitutes. Just like Lorenzo's body couldn't survive without the right oils, our bodies can't survive without the real God-given nutrients He intended us to eat. That brings us to the title of our message, What Christians Eat. Now you may be looking at me and they say, "Whoa, preacher, aren't you a hypocrite?" Yes, I am. But as the wise man said once, if the hypocrite stands between you and God, then the hypocrite stands closer to God than you are. But you could probably stand a little closer if I could just lose a couple more. It is time for us to start realizing that Christianity is more than just getting baptized and learning some Bible verses and the doctrine of the church. It's supposed to have a holistic effect. There's too many preachers like me that are way too big. You know, some of you found out about my numbers that I finally got my blood test back, and your sugar is supposed to be below 100. Well, mine was closer to 500. And then I went back and talked to her, and she said, you're what's that number? A1C. A1C. They said, your A1C, well, I don't know what it is. The number stops at 14 and yours is higher than that. They said to you, it's amazing you're alive. Now, this message I'm doing today, I've had this in the back of my mind for 20 years. But since we're doing this series of messages where we're trying to be extremely practical, we're trying to get out of the theoretical. Instead of just saying, read your Bible, we're trying to explain what does that really mean. And where we're at this week in our series of messages is that how should we eat? What are the good foods? And this is not going to explain everything, and I'm not going to be prescribing a diet. I'm not a doctor. I just play one on Sunday mornings. But this message is a rough outline of where we should go. There are people out there that are thinking this way, and we've got to find them. This is lost knowledge, and this is something that has got to be restored to the Christian community. You know, we've all grown up with the food pyramid. I know that I did. And basically it said, you want to have a lot of wheat, a lot of bread, cereals, things of that nature. Then they said you need to have some vegetables and a little bit of meat. And there at the top of the food pyramid, it said have sparingly. It said, like your sugars and stuff, but it also had fat and oils. What we're starting to find out is that this food pyramid may be upside down. I think that it is. One of the best ways to stop the cravings of sugar, for what I have found, and for a lot of people that are on carnivore diets or a low keto or things of that nature, is that if you have some fat in your diet, it stops the cravings of sugar. And I remember having this debate with a friend of mine years ago. He was trying to help me. We were working out. And he was like, I wanted everything super lean. And I was always dizzy. I was always hungry. And then I finally started eating some fats. Started getting some of that into my diet. And even though people are saying that fat is the enemy, I don't think it is. I don't think it ever has been. And we're going to look through the Bible today and see if this stacks up scripturally. But let me just remind you, back in the 1970s, just to set the tone, the government began warning us about fat, especially saturated fat cholesterol. We were told fat clogs arteries, gives you heart attacks, and should be avoided at all costs. That message hit hard. Food companies quickly reformulated everything to be low fat and fat free, but here's the catch. When you take fat out of the food, you got to replace it with something. And what did they replace it with? Sugar and refined carbohydrates. By the time the USDA rolled out the official food pyramid, the one in 1992, there was damage locked in already. At the very bottom, the foundation of the pyramid was bread, cereal, rice, and pasta. And they recommended 6 to 11 servings a day. And I remember thinking, that's real easy to do. But what they didn't distinguish, see, there was a distinction that had to be made. They didn't distinguish between whole grains and refined grains. Stuff you get out of your garden or stuff that's been processed in a factory. In their eyes, back in those days, a slice of white bread was just as good as a bowl of brown rice. And it wasn't. You see, whole grains have fiber, vitamins, and minerals. Refined grains are stripped of all that. They take all of that stuff out. And guess what? Those are the things that spike your blood sugar. And here's where it gets even messier. The science wasn't the only thing driving these guidelines. Lobbyists for the grain, meat, and dairy industries all had a seat at the table, and they all influenced the food pyramid. Some foods were downplayed, others promoted, not because of nutrition, but because of politics and profit. The end result, a so-called healthy eating plan was built more for corporate interests than for the human body. So here's what happened. We were told to fear fat. We were told to fill up on grains, most of them refined. And we trusted that advice because it came from an official government seal. But the reality, over these same decades, rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune conditions exploded. We're sicker now than before we attempted to fix our diets. And when we look closely, it's no wonder. We've replaced God-given, nutrient-rich foods with processed, chemically altered products, and we've been doing this now for 40 years straight, and it's time to realize this isn't working. I want to take you back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. This is before the fall of man, before sin came into the world, after God created us, and Adam and Eve, and said, go forth and multiply. He provided food for us to eat. And in that pre-fallen world, it says this. God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed. It shall be food for you. God made us vegetarian. And in that day and age, the fruits and vegetables could provide everything that we needed for health and sustenance. There was no need to kill an animal. There was no need to add chemicals. There was no need to rework anything. It was convenient. It was there. And we were made from the ground, and the food was from the ground. And so therefore we could get what we needed from the food that was nearby. That was the world that God had created. That was the world before sin came in and destroyed a perfectly good system. But when sin came in, it not only separated us from God spiritually, but it began a decline in our health. You see, when sin comes in, it doesn't just tempt you to do bad things. It tempts you to have Snicker bar. It Snickers you for a piece of candy or an extra slice of cake. It destroys us in every way, shape, or form. Being a Christian isn't just about walking around, being nice to people, and then carrying a Bible and having Bible verses to recite to friends and family members. No, Christianity is supposed to be, it produces something all the way from what we eat to where we work to where we live to how we interact, our standards for parenting. All of these things should be influenced by our faith in Jesus Christ. Notice here in verse 30, and it says, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth, which has life, I have given every green plant for food, and it was so. Guess what? The animals were vegetarian. You know that lie they taught you in school? They said, well, if an animal has sharp teeth, it means it's a meat eater. That's a lie from the pits of hell. The reason that animal has sharp teeth is because it probably wants to open up a coconut. Just looking at sharp teeth does not mean that animals are built, designed to kill. Have you ever heard of Little Tyke, the vegetarian lioness? Do you see the picture here with her little kitten friend? She was a real lion that they were nursing her. And when it came time for her to be weaned, they started to introduce meat into her diet. And she would never, ever eat the meat. And they were worried about, what were they worried about? They said, well, you need nutrition. Well, this particular animal didn't want it. She had specific needs, and she knew what her body wanted. And they were really perplexed, and they were scared what to do. As a matter of fact, they would take her milk, and they'd put a little drop of blood in it just to see if they could give her the taste for meat. And then the lion still wouldn't eat it because she could pick up on that one drop of blood. One day they met a Christian, and they were telling this Christian the predicament they had with Little Tyke, this lioness. And he knew his Bible, and guess what he told them? He said, don't you know that animals were made to be vegetarian too? Why don't you try it? So they started bringing her veggies. Guess what? This lion ate it and did fine for all of her life, and she was the sweetest little thing. And I have a book in my office about her life, and you can get the book off of Amazon if you want to read about Little Tyke. It's a wonderful little story. But notice here in the beginning, I want to finish with this right here. Verse 31 in Genesis 1. And God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was morning and there was evening the sixth day. God said it was very good. A lot of times I hear Christians say something like this. The little kid will go up to daddy and say, Daddy, why does the cat eat the mouse? And then daddy will say, well, God designed the cat to eat the mouse. And it takes its sharp teeth, and that's how it eats. That's how it lives. A lot of people don't realize that. That's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible said that not only were we vegetarian, but the animals were too. You know, you can still find spiders today that catch pollen in their webs. Did you know there is a type of piranha that eats the vegetation that floats on top of the water? It's true. This still happens. You see, we got all these preconceptions and these things mixed around within the zeitgeist of the culture. And we pick up stuff. And as you're going through the checkout line, you'll see one of those dumb magazines, and it'll have something about health and nutrition. And then we'll pick up something off from Oprah, of course, she's not around anymore, which is good. And you got all these talk shows, and you got all these pieces of information. Now things for the young people are coming over through the internet and through social media. Well, what happens is you end up with preconceptions. And I have those preconceptions too. And we all do. And we just sort of thought, well, okay, I'll become a Christian, but I'll leave food up to my doctor and the scientist that taught him, and the scientist who believes in evolutionary theory, which doesn't believe in a healthy man, but a man who is ascending to become more healthy. Long story short, you've got a lot of people out there that are trying to help us and get us healthy, but they believe in chemicals, and God believes in food. You see, man did not continue in the Garden of Eden, though, correct? What did he do? He sinned. He rebelled against God, and God judged the world with a flood. What happened after the flood? If you'll read in Genesis, you'll notice that lifespans go way down. They were up near 1,000. Even in a fallen world, in a sinful world, there were people living 800, 900, almost 1,000 years. But those lifelines began to decrease. And then it started to go from the 400s after the flood to down to about 100, 120. Seems to be about as long as anybody's been known to live nowadays. There could be some exceptions. But we don't live as long as we used to. Lifespans have decreased. Why? Because the world is different now. The world is different. I would contend this, that the plants that we were made to eat, that the fruit and vegetables that we were supposed to enjoy, they probably just don't carry the nutrients they used to in these conditions. If our lifespans have dropped, what has been the cause of that? Well, we could say sin. Yes, sin has an effect upon it, but more directly, it may be what we're eating. Even then, what they were eating wasn't sustaining them like it was before. Remember, if you were in the Garden of Eden, you could eat what? You could eat from the tree of life. And the further away you get away from that tree of life, the shorter your lifespan must be, in my reckoning. So animals and plants, they were better, they were bigger before the flood, even in a fallen world. One example I will give you is that, have you ever seen a sloth, went to the, on TV or went to the zoo and you see a sloth? They're about this big. Well, before the flood, and we have their fossils, okay? Their hind legs would be down here, and their head would be in the ceiling. How many of you seen a salamander in your life? How big's a salamander? Show me. That's right, about yay big. Okay. Before the flood, 6 foot. That's a big salamander.
Yeah.
Birds, mosquitoes, dragonflies. You know dragonflies are about yay big nowadays? Dragonflies. Something changed, and I think one of those things which is reasonable to assume is that the nutrients are no longer there. You see, but the animals under these rough conditions were better suited to rough it out. Animals will just sit there and eat grass. They'll eat whatever it takes. And also the animals began to hunt each other. So what has happened is that we learned to hunt the animals, and the animals would eat the vegetation that we need for nutrients. They would eat the grass, and we in turn would eat the animals. And it was made okay in Genesis chapter 9. And I think God did this out of necessity. Why? Because the nutrients were not there as good as they used to be. It says there, every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. I give all to you as I gave the green plant. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Don't eat animals with blood in it. So as he refilled the earth, man began to travel, and as he traveled, he would hunt. So in the beginning, God created the earth, and it was very good. There was no sin. And then man rebelled. After man rebelled, it says in Genesis that sin increased. It got worse. It got so bad that God judged the world with a flood. After the flood, conditions on earth had changed, and animals became a source of food. And even though we were only going to live about 100, 120 years, that was the best you could get, and still would be the best we could get today, until we learned how to industrialize food, and we went from farms to factories. And now we process and refine foods where we make it last longer on the shelf, but it has no nutrients for us. That's the world we're in today. But there is still some foods out there that I think that are better for us. Now, you could go low carb, you could talk calorie, it depends on which angle you're going for. I'm not sure exactly which one is correct because, like I'm saying, a lot of this is lost knowledge. But if you were going to go eat animals, and God said, go multiply and fill the earth, I think a person who ate protein on the run would do pretty well. But what happens once you get into cities? What happens if you start to settle in? What happens if you have a village and someone becomes a baker? You got to be careful what you put in there. But could you even have bread maybe that is good for you? I think the Bible says yes. Now, there are breads out there that even people that are not supposed to have carbs, if we had this type of bread, we could probably get away with it. Look at Ezekiel 4, verse 9. It says, but as for you, take wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and spelt, put them in one vessel, and make them into bread for yourself. Hey, you're saying, well, that's full of carbs. But look at all that fiber. If you're eating bread like this every day, you probably wouldn't have a problem. Now, this bread was worked into a prophecy for Ezekiel. And I'm not even dealing with that right now, but I'm just noticing this bread. Some have found this type of bread to be good for them. Maybe this is something you should try. Maybe this is something that you could eat and not spike your blood sugar. Because this has tons of fiber and nutrients. Modern bread removes these things for shelf life. And there is a bread out there called the Ezekiel bread. I haven't tried it, but if you see it, I've got a thumbs up. Is it good? Okay. There you go. I mean, this is really going to start word of mouth. And we got to say, what's good, what's bad? And like, did it spike my blood sugar? How did it make you feel? We might be able to have bread if the bread was made the way it was supposed to be. But right now, you can't touch bread because, American bread made from the factory just isn't as good. Notice here, let's talk sugar just for a second here. Which, I'm an expert on sugar, but I don't know everything. My son, eat honey, for it is good. Yes, the honey from the comb is sweet to your taste. If you had pure honey, maybe that might fit into a diet. And I'm sure it would fit in moderation. But I know when I go to McDonald's, and even if they give me a biscuit and I ask for honey, have you ever read the ingredients on their honey? It's not honey. It's something like honey, and then they add sugar to it. Refined sugar. What they're doing is they're making it cheaper, they're making it stretch, and it tastes like honey. But that's not real honey. You know, I lived in Florida, and they grew a lot of cane sugar down there. Hey, the further you get that sugar away from the stalk, the worse it is for you. You know, molasses is like a type of sugar where it's in between. There's still some fiber and nutrients in it. But when you process it down where all you get is the sweet and you don't get anything else, sugar becomes poison. Let's look here at Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 8, verses 7 through 8. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land. This is talking about the children of Israel going into the promised land. A land of brooks and water, of fountains and springs, flowing forth in valleys and hills. A land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates. A land of olive oil and honey. You know what? A lot of us are scared to say, I'm pro-environment, because that has like a leftist tinge to it, because some of those people worship the environment and they don't have any balance in their lives, and it seems like they're just trying to take us back into the Stone Age for no good reason. But we should be pro-environment. We should have higher standards for things that we can control, and these are things we can't control. Do we want clean water? Yes, we do. I know in Bucyrus, technically I can drink the water there. They say it won't kill me, but if you can taste it and it tastes like bleach, the thing is, we have a water bill that we pay every month, but we don't drink it. We have to go out and spend more money. We spend about $50 a month on other water. We got a little water cooler, and then we buy other water to make ice with. Why? Because we just don't want that in our system. It's okay to be pro-environment. People who are Christians can be pro-environment, but hopefully we can have some common sense solutions to problems like that. But notice here in this verse, look at the last part, a land of olive oil and honey. Olive oil, that's a good fat. Not all fats are bad. We have to figure out what are the good ones. And I got this suspicion that one of the good ones is probably olive oil. But let me tell you something though. If you go to a store to buy olive oil, it's probably cut with something else that's not good, because olive oil is expensive. So you have to get the more expensive bottle, and you have to turn around and see if it's had something added to it. And there's probably other good oils and fats out there, but you got to read the back of the bottles. You see, we have doctors, I have a doctor, you have a doctor, and we need to pray for our doctor. Because if he's not a Christian, he's going to be working from the wrong paradigm. Or he could be a Christian and just not know about Genesis. If you're not a Christian, you're thinking, well, we came about by evolutionary processes, and that we're ascending and we're getting better. No, that's not true. We're descending and we're getting worse. Every generation is a little less healthier than the generation before. Why is that? Because we brought sin into the world, and sin is having its effect. It's like a videotape. If you copy a videotape, the next generation is not as good as the original. And if you copy that one, it's a little less and a little less. And I hate to say this, people, but one of these days we're going to become chihuahuas unless Jesus comes back. We're going to be on the bottom end of the gene pool. We all have mistakes caused by mutation in our genes. And you can trace those mutations. And every generation has more mutations in their DNA than the previous one. So Jesus must come back. But I tell you what, we have to buy ourselves time. We've got to change our diets. If the doctor realizes that we were created healthy and strong in the beginning, and that it was what we had done, and it's our habits and our behaviors that has destroyed our health, they're able to help us more appropriately. Also, realize this, your doctor's under a lot of government and political pressure. If they step out of line with the treatment, if they try to do something some more natural, they could get in trouble. Also, you've got Amish around here that are trying to sell raw milk. I bet you that's the best milk. But there's government agencies that are trying to tell them they can't sell it. In the name of health, the government's making us unhealthy. And we have to stand up and be vigilant for these things. One more verse. Now the deeds of the flesh are evident, which are immorality, that's a temptation, right? Impurity, that's a temptation. Sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy. There's more. I just want to concentrate on one word there, though. And Paul says, and things like these. You see the word sorcery there? Before I tell you about the word sorcery is in Greek, I want to talk about 3 people in lab coats. Who wears lab coats? Scientists, chefs, and doctors. Now think about what they do for a second. What does a scientist do? What does a chef do? Okay. What does a doctor do? Here's a chemical. In the Greek, the word for sorcery is pharmakeia. It's the word where we get our modern English word, pharmacy. And the word that is used for sorcery that we associate with witchcraft, well, that implies the use of drugs, potions, and chemical mixtures. You see, if you're an evolutionist, what you're trying to find is the right chemical. If you're a Christian, you're trying to find the right nutrients. It's a different approach. And we have a lot of our professionals out there in lab coats who are sorcerers. And really what we need are nutritionists. Things I should have preached on to myself 40 years ago. Last verse. From the sole of the foot even to the head, there is nothing sound in it, only bruises, welts, and raw wounds. And now that we're talking about situations going on, I don't care about the situation. Well, I care about this little part of the verse at the end. Okay, this person's got a bruise, right? What does it say? It's with this bruise, this ailment, this wound was softened with oil. I brought to you today the video clip about Lorenzo's oil. Everybody said, just let him die. They said he needs the oil. We found out throughout the Bible it talks about we need the oil. We need that fat. We need that. The New Testament likens the oil to the healing balm that saves us. You put it on the wound and it covers us. It's even likened to the Holy Spirit and the forgiveness of sins. There's a spiritual reality, but guess what? There's a physical reality too. My final thoughts. Biblical people ate olive oil, fish, lamb, figs and dates, clean grains, and goat milk. Now, if you live in a different area of the world, you might have a slightly different version of that. But that right there, you know what that's called today? That's a diet. You know what that's called? That's the Mediterranean diet. And that's the one my doctor wants me on. And that's probably the one that we should be on too.